Hi, I'm Sophie, and we're at Red Wagon Plants talking about some of the herbs that we grew and dried this year so that we can have delicious teas all winter. So here we have some peppermint that we grew and dried. We've got calendula flowers, which start blooming in June and will go straight through frost. We have tulsi, which is a wonderful sweet flavored pollinator plant. Yarrow, which you can grow as an ornamental but also loves to grow wild in roadsides. We have anise hyssop, which is a beautiful native pollinator plant to the Midwest. Echinacea, of which there are tons of ornamental varieties, and you can also just get purpurea or angustifolia species. And lemon verbena. This can grow to be like a shrub in the Mediterranean or on the West Coast, but here it is just a annual herb that we grow. So typically when I'm storing herbs in the winter, I like to store each of my herbs separately so that when it comes time to blend my teas, they stay fresher longer. I haven't messed with them a whole bunch or garbled them prematurely, and it gives me an opportunity to blend it depending on the different circumstances. However, it's also really nice to have a pre-blended tea so that you can just reach for it when you feel like you need something right in that moment. So there's a couple ways that you can garble your herbs, one of which is just using your fingers. So with clean hands, your herbs should be dry enough that you can just break them into fine powder. We're not trying to powder it, right? We're just trying to break it up into something that's going to fit into our tea bag. If you're doing a ton of herbs all at once, it's really helpful to have a garbling screen. So basically that is just going to be some hardware cloth, 1/4 inch hardware cloth or 1/2 inch hardware cloth on a rack, and that way you can take your herbs as much as you need and just send them through the screen. This is really fun to do while listening to a podcast. It can be helpful to wear a mask if you're doing a lot because it can get quite dusty. And so that's the peppermint. You see that garbles quite easily. Something like the yarrow, it's going to take a little bit more effort to put it through, and you might end up with some stems on the outside, and you can just discard those stems because they probably aren't going to give you a lot of flavor in your tea anyway. You can see that's what's left over that I don't need. And so now we're starting to get something that's a little bit more uniform and is going to be really nice and easy to take as a tea. With something like the calendula flowers, you can garble these if you want to, or you can chop them up. I also love to just have them whole in my tea because they look really beautiful and they add a really nice touch, especially if you're giving tea blends as gifts. You can also just break them up and add them in like that. So we have our giant bag of tulsi that we harvested and dried throughout the summer this year. It's really bulky, and there's lots of stems in here that won't provide a ton of flavor or medicinal benefit if we're making it into tea. So we are going to go ahead and garble this entire bag, and then we'll be able to store it. I think it's probably all going to fit inside this ball jar. So now we have our herbs garbled. They are the perfect consistency for putting into tea. There's a couple stems in there, but that's not a big deal. So now we're going to use our funnel to put them into our ball jar so that we don't lose too many of them. And that way they will have a safe, airtight place to stay where we can keep them out of light and they'll stay fresh all winter. All right, so our tulsi has been sufficiently garbled. And now the most important step is labeling before we put it away so that we don't wonder what it is in February. So I like to label my jars with the herb that's inside of them, the year, so that you know how fresh they are. Really well stored herbs like this can last at least a year, usually 2 to 3 years if they're stored properly. If they last that long, hopefully you go through them in time for the next harvest. And then I'm also going to write where it was grown. So I have Tulsi 2020 Red Wagon plants. Put that right on there, and that can go in the cabinet with the others. I hope you have a ton of fun blending your own herbal teas this winter, and thanks for stopping by.